So let's get started. So now we're going to be doing Abstract Reasoning Question Bank 2. I'm going to be doing it untimed, but I definitely recommend you doing it timed during practice. It will just make it a lot easier to get used to the actual test conditions. I'll be explaining my kind of logic and what I'm thinking as I go along, but all these techniques that I teach you, we teach regularly on our one-to-one tutoring, so I definitely recommend checking that out. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, fine. So, right, so the first thing, before even actually looking at the boxes themselves, I'm just going to zoom out a bit and I can see that there's lots of crosses and there's lots of plus icons. So I think there's going to be a pattern related to that immediately without even looking. And it seems to be maybe a conditional pattern because there seems to be boxes that are white and there seems to be boxes that are black and white. So I can work out immediately that if it's a cross, it's going to be white. If it's a plus, it's going to be opposite, right? So that's just looking at set A. So without looking at set B, I'm going to think it's opposite. So if set A, for example, a cross is white, I think set B, a cross might be black. Looking at that, I find that not to be true, but I am along the right lines because actually a plus is all black and a cross is all black and white. And looking at both set A and B, I can see that the shapes that are opposite are the same. So if I find that, the color pattern does match A, if the shape's not opposite, then it will be neither. I hope that all makes sense so far. So looking at this first set, I can firstly see that it's all black. So I'm immediately thinking it has to either be B or neither, because A does not have a shape that is all black, or it does not have a shape that is all black. So this is definitely neither, because we know that the black shapes are all plus icons. The next pattern now. So this I am immediately thinking is going to be B because it looks like B. And it is actually B because the shapes are opposite. They match the same shapes that are opposite match. Okay, again, this fits into neither because we don't see a shape where the opposite, firstly, the opposite shapes are different and also the colours just don't match, so it has to be neither. Right, so this is a completely different. So which of these belongs into set B? So even if the question asks you, which of the test shapes belong to set B, it can sometimes be useful to look at set A because they tend to have opposite patterns and it can help you kind of find the pattern which fits set B anyway. So looking at set B, firstly, I can see that there's black dots and white dots, and I can also see there's curved shapes. So I'm going to take the simplest box in set B, which is this one here. And I can see there are 1, 2, 3 lines. Okay, so it could be a case of there being odd versus even, but that's quite long to count. So I'm going to try and think of other possibilities. I'm going to compare, so I can see 1, 2, 3 items coming out of the black dot. And I'm going to see if that's the same in this shape here. So there's 1, 2, 3. So that is the case. But I also see white dots as well. There aren't any white dots in this shape. So it could be that white dots, show 4 lines or etc. So I can see that's 1 and 2. Right. So we now have our pattern for set B. It's the case that if there's a black dot, there are 3 items coming out from it. If it's a white dot, there are 2 items coming out from it. And the way I deduced that was taking a simplest box in set B and then comparing it with another really simple box or adjacent box in set B. So looking at which of these belong in set B, I'm going to perhaps start with the most, again, simplest box here because I can either knock it out or rule it in straight away. So for me, that's this box here. So looking at the items, there have to be 3 items coming out of it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I know that's ruled out. Let's look at this one. So we know that there are 2 items. It cannot be B because if the white dot, there have to be at least 2 items coming out from it. Here there are 4. So it's between C and D. So if I look at C now, so this black dot has 1, 2 items, 1, 2 items. That's not what we want. We want 3 items. So we know immediately it has to be D. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's D. Again, same. So this is why I see, even if you're fooled into thinking about A, I have to now look at A. So I'm going to know it's something similar to that. So I'm going to look at the simplest box here again. So compared to here, I can see 2 lines coming out of a white dot, and there are no black dots. So I'm just going to compare it with this one. So it's 2. So set A is very simple. Set A is basically saying if there is a white dot, there have to be 2 lines coming out from it. Okay. So I'm going to rule out C and D because we don't have any black shapes in these, so we can't really compare them. So I'm going to look at B. So that's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So it can't be B because there are 3 coming out here. So we're going to look at A now. So that's 1, 2, 3. That's interesting. Right, so technically there is no rule in A that there cannot be a black dot. We perhaps just have to ignore it. So I think D we cannot look at because there are no white dots anyway, but C might be a possibility. I think C is the right answer because here there are 2 dots, 2 lines coming out of a white dot here and 2 lines coming out of a white dot here. I think we have to accept the fact that there are black dots. A and B don't fit the pattern, so it's a case of fair enough there are black dots, but they don't add or take away from the pattern that already exists, if that makes sense. Right, so now remember our trigger. If you see lots of different shapes organized in a different way, you have to think of not orientation, you have to think of kind of shapes being next to each other or adjacent could be a pattern. So I'm going to now take this box. So I see a plus in each corner. Now there could be a pattern that there is always a plus in each corner. So I can see that here, I can see that here, but I cannot see that here. So coming back to this shape, now I'm going to look at these squares. So it seems to be a square in this corner, but there doesn't seem to be a square in this corner. I'm going to then look at the triangles. There seems to be a triangle here, there seems to be a triangle here. Again, it's not a corner. Looking at the circles, I do notice that there's 2 circles next to each other. There aren't any other shapes here that are next to each other that I can see. So it could be 2 circles being next to each other. Yes, 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 yes. So do you see how I just isolated one shape in one box? And what I did was I worked my way. So I looked at the plus, then I looked at the square, then I looked at the triangle. So that's the best thing to do when you have lots of different shapes in one box. So we know that there's 2 circles that are adjacent to each other in this box. So for here it could be different shapes. So I'm going to look here. Are there any 2 shapes that are adjacent to each other? Yes, I see 2 squares. Right, so that's our pattern. Circles adjacent, squares adjacent. Here, 2 circles are adjacent, no squares, that's A. Oh, I missed one. I see 2 squares adjacent, that's B. I see 2 squares adjacent, that's B. Different patterns. So remember the trigger in the distractions tutorial. If you ever see curved, odd curved shapes, you have to think of straight versus curved as a pattern. So here what I am thinking is looking here at the simplest box. I see a curved line and a straight line. I see a curved line and a straight line. Okay, fine. So I can see 1, 1, and 1. 1 straight line and 2 curved line, 1 straight line and lots of curved lines, 1 straight line. Okay, so there seems to be a 1 straight line in each box. So here I'm going to see if there's the same. So there's 2 straight lines, 2 straight lines. Perfect, so 2 straight lines. So the curved line was actually a distractor, but it was also a clue because it told us it was something to do with straight versus curved lines. So looking here, this fits into A because there's 1 straight line. This fits into A because there's 1 straight line. This fits into B because there are 2 straight lines. This fits into B because there are 2 straight lines. Different pattern now. Okay, again, I'm going to take the simplest box, which is this one. So I see a 4-sided shape and I see 2 dots. So what I'm thinking is there are half as many white dots as there are shapes. So I'm going to verify that. Well, I can't because this triangle should have 1.5 white dots, which it doesn't. So let's just think. So this is 4 and that's 2. This is 3-line shape and there are 3 dots. So I'm thinking if there are black dots, then maybe they match up to the number of sides, and I can verify that because here there are 4 lines and 4 black dots. But what's the case when it comes to white dots? So I'm thinking there are 2 fewer white dots. That's very confusing. There's 2 patterns going on. So essentially, even if we look at this pentagon, we can verify that. So if we're thinking if this box belongs to set A, firstly we have to look at are there simply black dots or white dots? There's never a mixture. But before I do that, I just want to check the pattern for B. So it's going to be something similar. So here there's 4 dots. Okay, so there's 1 fewer black dot, as you can see in this box and this box. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh gosh, that's very confusing. But there appears to be 1 extra white dot compared to the number of sides on the shape. So that can be quite confusing. But let's just take one pattern at a time. So there's 3 triangles and there's 4 black dots. Does that fit into any pattern? No, because the only time where there are more circles than there are sides, we said, were in B, and that's only with white, so that's neither. This is a mixture which we have not seen, so I'm going to put that as neither, because we don't see black and white in either A or B. Right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm thinking this is A, because there are 2 fewer white circles than there are sides. Okay, next pattern. So these are arrows. Remember, with arrows, always think, are they pointing towards one direction or another? So I'm going to take the simplest box, which is here. So I can see one arrow pointing to the right and one box here. And comparing that to here, I can also see one black box, but I see 1, 2, 3, 4 black arrows. This is a tricky one. So maybe let's just ignore the box for now, and let's just think, okay, what is the difference between this box and this box? So I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, okay. So there are 4 right arrows and 2 arrows to the left. This is tricky. I would in the exam actually flag this and come back to it, because I actually cannot figure this out. So I'm going to flag, I'm just going to guess. Flag. Okay, thankfully it was only one pattern. Okay, brilliant. So now on to the next one. So immediately I can see that there's something about the black lines and the kind of lighter lines. So I could think that could be something that's related. I can also see arrows pointing in different directions. So they either seem to be pointing this way or this way in set A, but in B they seem to be oh no, that's not the case, because this box is pointing down. Okay, so I'm just going to take this arrow and this arrow, and I can see that there's these kind of vertical lines coming across. So the arrow is pointing down, and the arrows are basically going in a different direction to the way that the arrow is pointing, because here, for example, the arrow is pointing right, but the lines are going upwards. Whereas with this case, so if it's a lighter line, then it matches the direction of the arrow. So let's say, for example, this arrow is pointing right, so that means the lines are going to be horizontal. This arrow is pointing up, so the lines are going to be vertical. And it's vice versa. And for B, I imagine there's something opposite. So here the arrow is pointing down. Yeah, exactly. So now the lines are matching. And here the lines are matching. Fine, so we've kind of figured that out. So looking at this pattern, the arrow is pointing down and the lines are vertical. So we're immediately thinking this is set A. The arrow is pointing that way, but the lines are vertical. So I'm thinking this is more likely to be B. And it actually looks a lot like this pattern. Here it seems to be like A, because as we can see, they're matching. They're not matching the direction. So that's A. And then the last one, that seems to be matching and it's thicker, therefore I'm going to put that as B. So now let's just go back to our flagged pattern, which was 16. Let's see if we can figure this out. I actually I'm not really sure. So I'm just going to go through my mnemonics. I'm thinking it's not shape. Position, could it be the position of the arrow? Is the arrow in line? No. Orientation? No. I think it could be number. I think it's number, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to compare this one and this one again. So there are 3 arrows. There are 2 left arrows and 1 arrow to the right. There are 3 left arrows and 4 to the right. I honestly cannot figure this out, to be honest. I think we'll just have to check at the end, and yeah, we'll go with our guess. I think that's the best thing. And in the exam, think about it, you have 11 minutes. I've taken a lot longer to explain everything here. So yeah, anyway, let's see how we did. Or actually, do I click end? Click review screen. End review. Okay, 1 incorrect. Let's see which one. It was obviously going to be the one we got. Oh, the one we guessed we got correct. Let's see. It was this one that we got incorrect. Interesting. It's A. Okay. Maybe I missed something. 1, 2, 3. That's strange. An E. Oh, okay. So it wasn't a matter of the number of lines. It was an even versus odd. That was tricky. I did not expect that. Fair enough. And actually, I should have thought, this does not belong at all. So I should have second thought that. So whenever you think, that does look strange, think, could the pattern be something different? Am I missing something? And going back to the one we flagged, because we did get that one wrong, let's see what was going on here. Let's see what the pattern was. So let's look here. So for example, there are 4 arrows going one way, and because one arrow is going a different way, there's 1 square. Oh, okay, so the difference in the number of arrows determines the difference. So for example, if for example here there's a difference of 3 because there are 3 more arrows pointing right to left, that means there's going to be 3 boxes. And then for B, there are 2 squares instead of 1 square. So that's quite a tricky pattern. Now they do throw in these patterns, and I think the best thing, if you can't spot the pattern within 15-20 seconds, just guess and flag, because there is 55 questions. There's about 12 or 13 patterns minimum to guess. So you're not going to get every single pattern. But yeah, I hope you found that useful, and yeah, see you in the next video.